Your budget. Working within your means is the hardest task of all. Here we're going to figure out how much you have to spend. You will assess your needs and your actual income. Track your spending. How much money do you need to keep your business going? The best way to track this is just to write it down. Most artists do not really know how much they spend on their art in the beginning. You should track your spending for at least a month, or ideally for 2-3 months. You need to know how much money you can afford to spend on your art and want to find ways to make the most of the money you have. Once you know how much money you need for your art, you're ready. Think about your financial goals for your art. Identify your short-term and long-term goals. Make saving for those goals part of your budget. For example, goals may be buy 100 business cards, print 100 flyers about me and my work, pay for a website, pay for prints, pay 10 canvases for my next series, hire someone to do social media for me, hire someone to do work on my website, buy better quality paint. This will double my costs, but it will be worth it. Hire someone to create a publicity video that I can put on my site. Have enough money to go to an artist's residence course in another country. Visit an exhibit at a national gallery in November. List some of your goals. So write down at least 5, and then join me in the next part. Basic advice to most people also applies to your art business. To deal with unexpected situations, create an emergency fund. You should always have a little bit of an emergency fund to cover your living, and in this case, your art expenses for 3 to 6 months. Divide your expenses in 2 categories, needs and wants. For example, you may need new canvases to create that series, or you may want some new canvases just because you don't want to work on those hard parts of the canvases that you are working on. Small changes in spending habits can have a big impact on your budget and your ability to save. Ask yourself if you really need that new brush. Can you save the money and put it towards cards and advertising? For example, if you spend $250 a day on a coffee, it will cost you more than $900 a year. There are apps you can use to collect this information, or just do this in a small notebook. So a lot of artists aren't very techy, so what they do is they just take a little notebook. Every time they spend money, they write it down. Needs and wants aren't the same for everybody. A need can be a gallon of red paint for one person, if you're a muralist, but a single tube is enough for a miniaturist. Your needs and wants may also change over time. For example, you may only need a small studio right now, but in 5 years, you may need a larger space. Keeping track of your spending habits will help you really understand yourself and start you onto the path of saving and spending at the right place. Here are questions you ask yourself when you're making a budget. Are there any small recurring expenses you can cut? Are there expenses in the wants categories you can cut? Continue this exercise for a fair amount of time, 1 to 3 months. If your actual spending varies only a little from your budget, you're on the right track. Every person's budget needs to have a purpose. Otherwise, what's the point of doing all this work? Decide what your purpose is. Is it making enough to cover expenses? Is it making enough for a trip to see the treasures of the Louvre? Is it taking a course by your favorite artist? Is it selling enough artwork to go to an art expo in Europe? Is it selling scarves with your paintings on it so that it can be noticed by fashion designers? Your goal can be the stuff of dreams. You are allowed to dream. Here's an idea for you. Write down all your sales on the left-hand side of a paper and your business expenses. Then at the top, you write them each month. And any time you spend any money, you put it in that category. This is just an example of something you can try. Now, your goal for this section is to track your expenses and your sales for the next 3 months. Get a program or write it on paper but keep track for at least 3 months, and then you can actually start making a budget because you'll know exactly what is spent and how much you have coming in and the difference between the two. So do this in this section, and we'll see you in the next part.